And it's now my pleasure to welcome the final panel of this summit, Women in Elected Office, a discussion with Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke. Our moderator is APAIC's newest board member, the Honorable Betty Yee, who is the former California State Comptroller. She was elected in November 2014 following 2 terms of service on the California Board of Equalization. And Lieutenant Governor Luke is our special guest, and she is serving as the 16th Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii. She was elected in December of 2022 and is the first Korean American ever elected to a statewide office in the United States. So please give them a warm welcome.
How's everyone doing? Not asleep after lunch, right? I am so thrilled to be having this conversation with our Lieutenant Governor from the great state of Hawaii, the Honorable Sylvia Luke. And what a capper to a wonderful legislative leadership conference, because as we all know, a running theme throughout all of this is representation matters. And Lieutenant Governor Luke just has a wonderful, wonderful personal history, and I just wanted to start out the conversation, like, how did you get started in this? Was there a catalyst that really propelled you into thinking about running for office?
You know, before I start, I wanted to just recognize a few special people in the audience. But first of all, I'm from Hawaii, and if you want to come to, there's like fans of Hawaii out there. So if you want to come to Hawaii, we know right away if you're a tourist or if you are local, and it's the way you say Hawaii. And the rest of the nation say Hawaii, and we go, okay, tourist. But if you want to pretend like you're a local, then you say Hawaii. Yeah, you need a little bit more practice here. Okay. But anyway, I wanted to recognize special people. First of all, Scott Nishimoto, who is on the APAICS board. He's been a state representative for 21 years. And I know some of you looking out there, you're not even 21. So it is true, you can be in politics for 20-something years. And compared to that, we have the newest representative, Representative Kirsten Kahaloa. And the reason why I recognize these 2 individuals, Scott is one of the veterans, Kirsten is one of the newly elected representative. But you know, just like what Betty said, representation does matter, and the fact that they are here and they are representing not just the AHPI community, but to talk about some of the things that are really important, not just in the state, but nationwide, and to represent that, hey, you know what, there are representatives in their districts, and people out there and people in our community who want to run for office can look at them and say, hey, you know, it is possible for me as well. You know, for me, I was born in South Korea, and I came to the United States, to Hawaii when I was 9 years old. And I did not speak a word of English, and the way that my father and my mom taught me English was there were two things. So number one was they would draw a letter with a corresponding picture. So I would go into and then paste it all over the house. So I would go to the bathroom, and there would be a letter A with a drawing of an apple. So all over the house, it would be taped all over. The second thing that that my parents did was they let me watch Sesame Street. So I came during the summer of 1977, and I either had pasted paper around the house or I watched Sesame Street. So sure enough, I was very confident. First day of school, I would be like, okay, I know some English words. So I would be like, where's agua? Because Sesame Street, I had no idea that they taught English and Spanish. So I would be like, okay, I know where my mi casa, su casa, and agua, and then what are all these other words? I don't know. But till this day, I still remember those words because of Sesame Street. And that is the quality of education, because at a young age you soak everything in. And the reason why I talk about education is, so the first day of school I arrive and I don't even know where the bathroom is because it's not as friendly now. I mean, it's not as friendly then. So in order to go to the bathroom, you would have to read GIRLS. And for an immigrant who can barely understand English and thinking that, you know, words like agua is English, I couldn't find the bathroom, and I would have to go look for a bunch of girls, follow them in, not like in a stalker way, but, you know, wait for them, and then go in. But, you know, I had a teacher who pretty much said, I'm not going to send you to an ESL class because I don't want you with a group of kids, and it will be so much more productive for you to sit with me every day after school, and I'm going to take my time to teach you English. And the reason why I tell that story is because we have a bunch of educators in the room represented by the National Education Association, and all those people who are educators, if you could stand up, OSA. And the reason why I point them out is because I think as Asian Americans and as Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians, it's really education that drives us, and it's education which is a great equalizer. And for myself, my parents were both educated in South Korea. They had they were college graduates, and they made sure that all of the kids value education. And so when I went through my own experience of growing up not understanding English, some of the struggles of assimilating to Hawaii and America, it made me understand that, hey, you know, it's not really so much about money, it's not so much about what you have, but it's about how do you make things better for others. Because I can tell you, growing up, we weren't rich, you know, we were struggling, and there were times where we thought, okay, both my parents were working all the time, and we would have to take care of ourselves. But my mom always found time to go to church, take care of an older individual or grandma at church, or somebody who was sick. So growing up, we understood the value of taking care of others, the value of service. And so when I look back into why I am doing what I am, it's really a tribute to them and tribute to all our parents and our grandparents and our forefathers that laid the groundwork for me to be who I am. And so in a typical politician way, I pretty much took up 5 minutes answering that one question. So back to you, Betty.
That's okay. Thank you. And what I will say about that response is that it's so just grounded in values, right? And so obviously your upbringing and just what influenced you as a young person is certainly, I think, what we know about you today in terms of how you fight for access to broadband and preschool and just trying to, you know, make the world better for others who can have that access. So as Lieutenant Governor, and certainly as a female Lieutenant Governor, undoubtedly you have faced some challenges. Maybe tell us about a couple of those and how you overcame them.
Yeah, so I'm the 16th Lieutenant Governor and the 3rd woman Lieutenant Governor. But I'm going to tell you some of the challenges prior to being Lieutenant Governor. So I've been Lieutenant Governor for about 6 months now. But before that, I've been in the legislature for 24 years. Out of the 24 years, the last 10 years, I've been the chair of the Finance Committee. And as you can imagine, chair of the Appropriation and Finance and Budget Committee is a tough task. But one of the things I did was when I first decided to, or when I was first asked to be the chair of the Finance Committee, is I wanted to form who I am, and I wanted people to understand my style and who I am. And one of the big things before becoming finance chair, there was, in the state of Hawaii, judges are not elected. They are appointed or recommended by a group of a board. So this board 1 year decided to dump 5 women judges and not re-up them. And the reason why they decided to do that, and it was all 5 in a row, and then they all cited, when we asked them, okay, what led you to do that? They said it was temperament. And it was a big controversy in the legislature, and women legislators were very upset, and they said, hey, you know what, we need to have a commission, and they kind of cleaned up their act after. But if temperament was the judge for women, then temperament should also be a judge for men, and I understood then and throughout our lives, women and men are not treated equally, especially when it comes to strong women. So a lot of times strong women are called bitches or witches or dragon lady. But one of the things, yeah, and me too. And then so one of the things I wanted people to understand is I wanted them to see me as a strong figure, and I wanted them to understand that I could be a bitch, or I could be a witch, and I certainly can be a dragon lady. And for them to understand that they should be comfortable with that instead of labeling. So I was very strict when departments came up. I demanded answers, and I would sometimes scowl. But after a while, they got used to it, and they're like, okay, she just wants answers. And so when I decided, but it took long years for us to reform and for people to understand just because you have a strong woman doesn't mean she's a crazy bee or crazy dragon lady. It's somebody who's gonna hold you accountable, make sure that you can answer your question, and make sure that you are stewards of taxpayers' money as I am. So it was a long 10-year journey. So when I decided to run for lieutenant governor, people define me as the budget hawk, somebody who's gonna hold people accountable, demand transparency, as opposed to if I didn't work towards the image that I wanted to create, for not just for myself, but for many other legislators and for many other leaders as well, people would just kind of say, okay, you know, here's this, you know, crazy dragon lady who's running and who's a bully. But then the labeling did not come, and they portrayed me as a strong figure. And now that I'm answering this question, I completely forgot what your question was, but I'm sure you found my response way more entertaining than what I thought the question was gonna be. So, Betty, back to you. Yeah.
So I think we can all agree that Lieutenant Governor Luke had no problems overcoming her challenges. Let's put that. And certainly as chair of the Finance Committee, you know, woman after my own heart, I mean, we have just the expectation that we are going to be tough stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And so, and we also know how to say no with a smile. So that's a given. You know, I see so many women here, and thank you to APAICS for really uplifting women on so many of our panels over this Legislative Leadership Summit. But what advice would you give to women who want to enter the political or public service arena? You know, people talk about the rough and tumble of it. You just spoke about, you know, just your own experience in it. But what would be some advice for women who really are seriously considering a career?
You know, over my years, a lot of people ask me, you know, a lot of people who are interested in running for office, they would come to me for advice. And women particularly would come with me with 1,000 questions and 1,000 reasons why they're not going to do it. So that's the knee-jerk. Like, is the timing right? Okay, what if I have a family? What do I do if I get a challenge? What happens? So they would come already prepared with why they shouldn't do it. So my advice to you is it's never a good time. If you think of trying to figure it out, it's never gonna work. So it's never a good time. So if you're even thinking that it's a possibility, then you're already there. Because if you are thinking too hard, then you'll never get there. So even, all of you folks, not just women, all of you folks, the last thing you wanna do is doubt. But the scary thing is if you don't try, you're not gonna make it. Even for myself, when I ran 24 years ago, or 25 years ago, it was, I thought about it and I decided to do it right away. Even the LG, when I decided to run for lieutenant governor, a lot of people plan years in advance, but it just came. I thought about it in October. We made a decision basically in a month. And that's what you have to do. You just gotta jump in head first and just do it. And there's always gonna be a reason not to do it. So I encourage all of you to do it.
That's a great response, because what it brings to mind is that all of the doubt that I think women have, and certainly all of the barriers that we know about in terms of running for office, I also think it's time for women to change the rules of the game. In terms of how we measure up, what we bring to the table, right? And I mean, your own experience leading up to your statewide run, you had all the credentials in the world, and particularly with your finance background. So I just think that it is time for us to just think about how we change up the rules of the game as well. So you have had just such a passion for so many issues, and a lot of it informed by your own personal life. But what legacy do you hope to leave?
So I'm gonna digress. But you guys know that already. So one of the duties of our office, Lieutenant Governor has different duties in many of the states. In the state of Hawaii, we have Secretary of State duties. So Secretary of State, we do name changes, we do certification of documents, and so nobody emailed me asking for Barack Obama's birth certificate, because we certify birth certificates and we certify documents that you need to go to the foreign country. But in order to get an application, what's known as apostille, guess how much it is? $100? No, less. 50? No, less. 0. Okay, higher. $1. So yeah, so now even more so, yeah, you guys guessed it in the back. So now for real, don't call me to certify documents, because it takes more than $1 to process this certificate. But because it's state government, we are slow to change and we're slow to come up to speed on a lot of these antiquated systems. And it has been $1 since before Scott Nishimoto was born. So before, we found an audit in the 1960s saying, okay, you have to increase the prices, and then you got to change with the times. So since 1960, it hasn't been changed. And it costs $1. Guess how much, or guess what kind of payment we accept? No. You got to think 1960. Money order, yeah. So in 1960, people didn't really have a check. So as I said, it didn't change the system since 1960. So money order, cashier's check, or what's the second form of payment? Cash. So I get all these documents with $1 in the mail, and I don't care what people told you when you were growing up. You should not be mailing cash through the mail, but these people who have probably never heard of what money order is, because all you folks who are in your 20s, how many times you've have gone through money order. So money orders, cashier's check, cash. So instead of trying to figure out what a money order is, they send me cash. And so every day my staff has to go to the bank, because as soon as you receive cash, you have to deposit. So they would deposit like $6. So they walk to the bank, deposit $6. But those individuals who listened to their mama and said, don't mail cash, they would go to the bank and try to get a cashier's check. And guess what it is? Guess how much you gotta pay for a cashier's check, unless you are a member of the Federal Credit Union. So how much is it? So, oh, your bank is so generous. Sometimes it's $25. And so you're gonna spend $26, of which only $1 come to our office to get this document processed. And sometimes my staff, in as much as how careful they are, they rip open the envelope and there goes the cash or cashier's check in half. So they would have to send it back, which costs our office more than $1 to mail it back. So we're spending all this money, and the reason why I bring this up is the way that we view government and the way that I want to change the process and the way the legacy that I want to leave is state government should not function because that's how it's always been. You have to reimagine state government. You have to think about what services you are providing and how is it more efficient and relatable to you. We wonder why people don't vote, and we wonder why people question state government or federal government or county government, because it's not relatable and we don't try hard enough to make it relevant to you. So a simple task like doing a certification of document, we have to try to reinvent and be responsive so that, guess what? Instead of $1, I'm sorry, state of Hawaii residents, it's gonna be $10 for you. But that will lead to better results because we're gonna have an online process, credit card payment, whether it's Venmo or whatever new system of payment is gonna be. But we have to try to reform. And that's what the legacy that I continue to strive for.
I really like that answer, Lieutenant Governor, because as mundane as it may sound, that's what people are looking for. They want their government to deliver and to serve them. And so the customer service aspect of that I really love. We have some time for a few questions from the audience. And so let's see if there are hands. Yes, right here in front.
I have a loud voice. Okay. Hi. My name is May Lee. I'm a journalist and also an academic. And pleasure to meet you, Lieutenant Governor, fellow Korean American. So very
Korean.
Proud of you. But I have a personal question. As a Korean American whose parents also immigrated, I'm wondering what they thought about you going into politics, because there's a Korean word for Korean girls who should be yamjane, right? That means we should be really sort of delicate and sort of quiet. I went into broadcast journalism and my parents were totally against it, because they thought it was too exposed. So in politics, I'm sure same thing. So curious as to what your parents initially thought and what they think now, if they are still with us.
Yeah. So if you guys watch Korean dramas,
Yes.
all the things that they describe about mother-in-laws and mothers, it's all true. And that's why my husband watches like crazy. My husband is half Japanese, half Korean, half Chinese. I don't watch at all because it reminds me too much about my childhood, and it reminds me too much about how Koreans are, because they are that hot temper and they will demand that their kids become lawyers or doctors or engineers, and that's the truth. And I know many Koreans out there, you're like, yeah, I know. I hear you, sister. It's fine. But so unfortunately, my father passed away when I was in high school, so I had a single mom. But when I first told my mom that I was gonna run for office, I said, "Mom, I'm gonna run for office," and she went like this. and then she didn't really talk to me. But not because she was mad, but she thought I was just joking. And then she realized, oh, she's serious. And she was like, oh, okay, you're serious. And then she came out to Sine Wave, and she was like the best supporter ever. But I think my mom was, because she was struggling with 3 young kids, she didn't have time to go and try to set me in that pathway of traditional Korean child. But then I think the other thing is she understood what I what I wanted to do, because even before becoming a state legislator, I was involved with state government in not just high school, but at college. So even at the University of Hawaii, I was the first woman president for 10 years. So the last president, female president before me, which was 10 years prior to me, was also a Korean American. And so I think she understood just from watching me, and we had a really good relationship, that this was important to me. And as opposed to going a different path, life in service was something that I needed to do to make sure that I take care of other individuals who don't have voices represented in politics, who don't have voices to stand up to do what is right for them.
I think we have time for one or two other questions. Yes, right here.
Lieutenant Governor, again, I'm from the state of Utah.
Yeah.
So we as Polynesians and Pacific Islanders are very slim in number in comparison to our constituents, and our colleagues. And I've asked this question to Governor Cox recently, because we had advocated as the Pacific Island Chamber of Commerce for an appropriation for the chamber of $300,000. And we were told that you weren't given it because we decided that we're not going to give any of the other chambers, and now you're included in that any of the other chambers. So my question to him was, we've never been part of the other chambers till this year. So why are we then held as part of this general table, which we had never been at, but now we're coming to speak on behalf of our people to get an appropriation? So I wanted to see, from your end, being a minority on that aspect, how can I, in Utah, break that barrier down to then say, okay, we've never been at that table, we're there now, but now we're pulled in with everybody else and not given the appropriation that can help leverage our people and bring us up.
Yeah. No, thanks for speaking up. I think it is a struggle, right? So it is, I think we had discussions about the AHPI struggles, and it is about kind of separating out, like desegregating the data, because sometimes, we in Hawaii, we talk about how Native Hawaiians are put with Pacific Islanders, but Pacific Islanders have different struggles from Native Hawaiians, and they have different issues. So even like when you check the box for Asian, the struggles of Japanese Americans and Vietnamese Americans and Laotian Americans are very different. And the struggles that Chinese Americans are going through between their struggle about desegregation of data, it is a real issue. And even a multicultural state like Hawaii, where we don't have a majority ethnic background, we struggle as well to recognizing every different segment, but we have to continue to look for things. I think the thing about the United States, we value the fact that it's a melting pot of different races, but part of the importance of that melting pot is recognizing the individuality of all the ethnic backgrounds and all the different groups that make it up. So it is important for us to honor heritage. And I think for you, to be at that table is great, but it's kind of late coming. And now they're using that as an excuse not to promote you and promote your specific chamber. And I think you should take that opportunity to try to elevate others or come together with other chambers and see if you can fight for more funding.
Thank you for the question. One last question in the back.
Thank you for taking my question. Lieutenant Governor, can you just talk about your efforts towards public preschool, especially as it relates to NHPI communities?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's like, he's from Hawaii, so it's like a softball. So in addition to my Secretary of State duties, one of the things that the governor and I agreed was I've asked if I could continue my efforts for early learning, building out preschools and expanding broadband, because those are issues that I worked on as a legislator. And one of the things that I remember when I was growing up, the superintendent of education, when I was in high school and college, he declared that by year 2000, we will give access to all 3- and 4-year-olds to preschool. And I remember talking to my colleagues last year when I was in the legislature. I said, hey, I remember this guy saying this, but year 2000 came and went 22 years ago, and we have not moved the needle in building out more preschool. And now I feel so fortunate that not just on the state level, but on the federal level and the county levels, we are talking about giving preschool access. And the reason why it's so important is, I'm sure Hawaii is similar to many of the states. The parents who can afford to send their kids to preschool are sending their kids to preschool. Parents who cannot send their kids to preschool are not sending their kids to preschool. So preschool is not only about getting kids ready for kindergarten. Preschool is an access question. It's a social justice question. It is about equity, because when you're going into kindergarten and you cannot have good assessment on the first day of school, you are already labeled and you are at a disadvantage. So it's giving kids the same opportunities as everyone else. And many of our communities are in disparate communities, and many of our communities who are immigrants don't have the means to send their kids to an expensive preschool situation, are setting up their kids in a very disadvantaged light. So for us, it's our opportunity to provide those opportunities for young kids at 3- and 4-year-olds, give them access early. So one of the things that I did as finance chair is I committed $200 million to building out preschool, and that's the largest state investment to build out preschool. I was a little bit afraid at that point that I would lose, and then this $200 million would be wasted, but good thing I won. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So we've been delighted to have you with us, Lieutenant Governor Luke, and as many of you know, the Office of Lieutenant Governor, which exists in 45 of our 50 states, is often the ground from which we see our higher office obtainers. So we look forward to your future, either for Governor or U.S. Senator of Hawaii. And please help me in thanking our Lieutenant Governor from the great state of Hawaii, Sylvia Luke. Thank you.